I was able to buy that with $10,000 of my own, which I got from a line of credit, and they financed $110,000 at 3% interest. And this was, this is a while back, but when interest rates were a lot higher. Deal that I was involved in, this is a few years ago before Brandon and I got together with Red Ladder. I think it was probably 2015. I had sent out some direct mail, and I had done it in a really good school district in Omaha called District 66, which is pretty desirable. People like living there. This is a starter house neighborhood, which I was targeting on purpose. So I wanted to pick up basically starter homes that fly like hotcakes off the market if you want to sell them, and they're really easily rentable for good rents. So I had a lead that was a result of a letter that I had sent. Their father had owned several investment properties and he had passed away. The kids are now, 65 and 70 years old, right? So they now own his properties and they're basically unwinding the portfolio. This was the last thing left. It was a duplex, side by side, and 2-bed, 1-bath with full basement in District 66, yard, the whole thing.
Tell me you still own this thing.
I do still own it.
Of course
yeah.
you do.
So this was, again, 5-6 years ago, something like that, maybe 7. I was able to buy that with $10,000 of my own, which I got from a line of credit, and they financed $110,000 at 3% interest. And this was, this is a while back, but when interest rates were a lot higher than they were through the, last 5 years. But so I still own that, and that was a 25-year amortization, and I just put it on, it just cash flows like a monster.
Oh,
I mean, I have 120 grand into that, 3% interest. And I think both sides, they rent for $1,200 each side.
Gosh.
So, I mean, it's like a 2% rule. So that was a pretty sweet deal. So, almost 100% seller financing. That's
so
3%.
You're sitting on some equity there is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was seller financing?
Seller financing.
I missed that. They gave you a 3% rate?
Yes. Yeah, and they didn't need the cash because they had cash. They just wanted some steady income to replace basically what was a pain in the butt rental for them.
3%.
3%. I didn't even. I wish I could say that it was my superior negotiating skills, but they came to the table and I said, "Hey, I don't know if you guys would be open to this, but
2.5. Does 2.5 work?
Yeah, have you like, what are you guys going to do with the money?" And they're like, "Well, we thought about actually financing that. We were going to do that on the last one. It didn't. The guy kind of flaked out. They were like, but if you had some money in it." I said, "Well, okay. How about would $10,000 work?" And they said, "Yeah, that probably works." So then we started drawing out the paperwork, and I said, "Well, what do you guys think is a fair interest rate?" And they said 3%.
They say
where do I sign?
My CD is kicking out 2.25%.
Yeah, that was probably the driver of this. They're probably making like a 0.5% in their money market or savings account, and so they thought, hey, 3%'s not bad. Better than we can get it, putting it in the bank.
Makes me cringe.
Yeah, right. And so that's another one. But you would never know that unless you ask the question. So you just have to ask, and you don't have to do it in a douchey way. You can just be like, what do you guys, have you thought about what you're going to do with the money? Would it make more sense to earn a higher interest rate than you get at a bank? See what they say.
It happens all the time for me especially if an agent's involved. I'll say, okay, here's what we'll offer traditional purchase. Here's what we'll offer with some seller financing. And they're like, what? Sometimes I have to explain to the agent what seller financing is. And if the agent knows, they'll say, oh, they'll never go for that. And I said, well, okay, I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, do your job. Because this isn't my agent, it's the seller agent. This is what it is. And half the time, not half the time we offer, but half the time that conversation happens where someone's like, they'll never go for that, or that's too complicated. All you had to do is ask, and they're like, yeah, sure. And maybe they adjust it. Maybe I asked for $300,000 seller care and they dock it down to 200, or maybe I asked for 5% and then moved it to 5.5. But just asking that question changes the rest of your life.
It does. And going back to the Papillion deal we were talking about, the 24 unit, that was part of the deal too, because we offered, I think, 1.65 1.65 million. And that was with 100% or 80% bank financing, but we would have had to bring 20% down. And the other offer was 50 grand more. So we offered 1.7 and we got $200,000, which was worth it because we didn't have to put all that money down as a down payment. We could apply that then toward the rehab instead and then get a quicker return on that money because we could do a refinance more quickly because we had more accessible capital. So that was a win-win too, and that was a step 1, step 2 offer. So we did basically offer A, offer B, and they took offer B. which was more money.
Yeah, and it would have been fine. So say that was our one deal for the year and we knew we weren't going to take another deal down for a year. Sure, we could have put our own capital into it and it would have worked just fine. And, the overall margin would have been better. The return on investment would have been, it'd be literally infinitely worse since we put in $0 on the front end. But then having capital for deals that we actually have to put money into, that was then accessible because of that.
Leverage.